All right, step aside, Charles Dickens. Put down that Anthony Trollope. It's time for Jane Austen July. Welcome back to the Bookshelf Odyssey. My name is Art, and today, like I said, we're going to talk about Jane Austen July. And I want to share a very simple TBR that I have for this month. I will probably not be going full steam ahead in Jane Austen July like I have. I think one year I especially went all out and did all the prompts, read at least one book, if not more, in each prompt. And just about every book I read that month was by Jane Austen or had something to do with Jane Austen. And that was fun. Don't get me wrong. I just don't know if I'll have time to go that crazy this year. And one of my personal goals is I'm really trying not to overdo things or to commit to more than I can accomplish. But I'm going to just walk through the main prompts and share some books that I'm going to be reading. So if you don't know, Jane Austen July is a fantastic month of reading Jane Austen. And if you want to participate, the very simplest thing you can do is read a Jane Austen book. This month, the group read book is, I believe, Sense and Sensibility. But I said in a previous video, I'll be reading Mansfield Park because that's one I started reading in January, and I've been reading slowly throughout the year as a part of a book club that the Omaha chapter of Jasna is reading that throughout the year. So I've been reading with them and have really enjoyed the reading experience. I've been reading the annotated version, which is a monster book, and with detailed footnotes. There are annotated versions of all of her novels, which I think I'm going to collect and read because it has certainly enhanced my reading. The way the book is formatted, you have the story on one page, and then you have all the footnotes on the opposite page, and so then you can just kind of read and jump back and forth. I would not recommend doing it that way if it's your first time reading. I think that would be very hard unless you're, a huge fan of footnotes. And I mean, who's not? Okay. But it can be very distracting. But if it's a story you're familiar with, I think it can help enhance the story. Or if you are teaching it, or if you are leading a book club discussion on it, I think that those notes would be extremely helpful. I don't know what the group will be reading next year for the Jasna group I'm a part of. I think it might be Emma, if they're going through in chronological order of publication. That is my favorite Jane Austen novel. It's my favorite Jane Austen, adaptations. I haven't yet seen a bad one. I haven't seen them all, so don't come at me with suggestions. But but the ones I've seen have been excellent. And to me, that just shows the, just the magnificence of Emma. So for the reading the main novel prompt, I'm going to be reading Mansfield Park. Again, a book, the heroine there is Fanny Price. She's a very meek and mild and quiet heroine. Different than than you get in Persuasion. A different kind of quietness, I think. Although there's some maybe overlap there. But I'm enjoying it. I've read it before, but I don't really remember much about the plot or where it's going. So I'm about halfway through right now, and I've been laughing over just the antics surrounding the play they were trying to put on, and then some of the games that they're playing, the balls, of course, they go to. I'm still trying to grasp what the point of this book is, but even, this is what I say about Dickens too, that even a bad Jane Austen novel is still a pretty good novel in and of itself. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's just one of my least favorites. But with the annotations and discussing it with a group and things, it's really made this experience a lot more enjoyable. Anyway, that's Mansfield Park. That's the main novel I'm reading. If you are new to Jane Austen, I would recommend either reading Pride and Prejudice, because that's probably her most famous one. And you could say, well, at least I've read one. And honestly, if you don't like Pride and Prejudice, it's okay if you don't, but I think the chance of you liking some of her other novels would go down dramatically. I could be wrong. I'm sure I'm wrong. I'm sure there's somebody out there that says, oh, I hate Pride and Prejudice, but I love all the other books. I know there's some crazy people out there like that. All right, but I would recommend Pride and Prejudice or Emma. I think those two are good introductions to her, and they're probably her best works. And then the other challenge is to read something that's not one of her main novels. So like, I know she's written some juvenilia. There are some novel fragments that she has that you can read. And this is a prompt I don't think I'll be doing this year. I believe last year I read some of her juvenilia and really enjoyed that. I don't really want to read her like partial novels and books that she hasn't finished, like Sanditon and the Watsons, just because I don't like reading unfinished novels. I made an exception for Dickens's novel, The Mystery of Edwin Drood, but I really dislike reading only a chunk of a story. So that's just more of a personal taste. But this year, knowing I don't think I'll have time to do all the prompts, I'm just going to cut this one out. But there's certainly a lot of good options. And if you haven't read her juvenilia, that's a good place to go. They're funny. They are so funny. And then a nonfiction work about her. This is where I probably have the most options to read. I've been collecting some books, biographies and books about her over the last year or two. And I've got two that I'd like to get to. One is called A Portrait of Jane Austen by David Cecil. The other one is called Jane Austen, Her Life by Park Honan. And being biographies, I'm not sure if there's one or the other that would stick out more to me. It might just be I flip a coin and see which one I read. But those are two that are next up on my Jane Austen TBR list. So I would I'd be picking one of those. I recently finished a book called Jane Austen and the Clergy, and that was a really fascinating book. I describe it this way. It's not entertaining, but it's informative, and it can at times read kind of scholarly, but the information is presented in a very interesting way. So much of Jane Austen's life has been influenced by the clergy. I believe her dad was a clergyman. Her brother was a clergyman. She had family that were in the clergy. She wrote about clergymen, and not all of her characters, all of her clergy characters are nice guys. Some of them are pretty rough. So it's almost like you had to wonder, did she not like the clergy? But this book goes into that and talks about the influence in the people around her who are in the clergy. And then it shifts to kind of explaining what the church system was like at that time, and, where the parson would live and what the parsonage looked like and what were his duties and responsibilities. And then the author, she wove into that discussion scenes and quotes from the Jane Austen novels where you see that fact or truth explored in her stories and characters. So that was a lot of fun because it's bringing in her literature, her stories into the discussion. So I would say be careful if you haven't read all of her stories and you wanted to read that book. I believe there are some spoilers. Nothing specific comes to mind, but it's hard when you've read them all multiple times. You're just familiar with it. I would be careful about that, but that's the fun part of having read through an author is now you can explore more about their world, their books, read critical essays about them and all that, and not have to worry about spoilers. So this month's Jane Austen July will probably be nonfiction heavy, more than in past years. I think I've even got about 3 or 4 other nonfiction books about Jane Austen that I haven't gotten to yet. So I certainly have some choices. Okay, the other prompt is read a retelling or a work of historical fiction set in Jane Austen's time. Now, I really enjoy doing this. This is a prompt that I've enjoyed. Tirzah Price has a great mystery series. I think there's about 3 books in the series now that kind of rewrite Jane Austen novels and add a mystery to it. So, and I've talked about these books every year because I think they're just fantastic. You've got Pride and Premeditation. That's, of course, Pride and Prejudice. And that one, Lizzie Bennet is a lawyer in training, so that was a lot of fun. We've got Sense and Second Degree Murder, which is, of course, based on Sense and Sensibility. The one, I think, this is the one that just came out. It was Manslaughter Park. And see, so that's why I feel like I've just read this book, because I'm reading Mansfield Park, which this book is based on, and I know it's been a while, but I'm like, didn't I just read this not too long ago? That's why I read Manslaughter Park within the last year. So okay, mystery solved there. Is there a new book out? Yes. Looks like Tears of Price has a new book coming out featuring Lizzie and Darcy. It's called In Want of a Suspect. And let's see what it's about. It says, it is a truth universally acknowledged that London's first female solicitor in possession of the details of a deadly crime must be in want of a suspect. The tenacious Lizzie Bennet has earned her place at Longbourn, her father's law firm. Her work keeps her busy, but luckily she often has help from and steals occasional kisses with Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, a stern but secretly soft-hearted solicitor at Pemberley. Lizzie is hired to investigate a deadly warehouse fire, find the mysterious woman who was spotted at the scene moments before the flames took hold. But when the case leads her to the sitting room of a woman Darcy once proposed marriage to, the delicate balance between personal and professional in their relationship is threatened. Anyway, it looks like the prime suspect is murdered, and then the plot goes on from there. So this is great. When is this book coming out? Oh, it's not coming out till November, so that's unfortunate. But I've really enjoyed Tears of Price's adaptations of Jane Austen's novels. She has, and I've interviewed her before on my podcast, so I'll make sure to post that interview. But she has a great love and a deep knowledge of Jane Austen that really informs her writing. And so I think if you are an Austen fan and maybe are a little bit hesitant about retellings, this is a good series. That's a recommendation there. Another one that was a favorite is the Jane Austen Project. It's about 2 characters go back in time. They're in the future. They go back in time to the past of Jane Austen's time to try to. It's been a while now. I think they're trying to find that they think maybe one of her unfinished novels actually was completed, and they're trying to find the manuscript. And time travel shenanigans ensue. If you like Jane Austen and time travel, it seems she gets around quite a bit. Another one you could read is The Particular Charm of Miss Jane Austen. I read that last year, kind of a whim. I think I did a buddy read with it, and that was a surprise. It was really, really fun. It's by Ada Bright and Cass Grafton. It's a powerful love letter to the impact that beloved authors can have in a person's life, not just their culture, but a person's life. So in that story, Jane Austen gets transported into the future, into present day England. And as is wont to happen in a time travel story, time gets changed. It's well worth a read. And then there's a sequel that's just as good. So those are some recommendations there. Another prompt is to read a recommendation or read a contemporary of Jane Austen. And I've really struggled with that in the past. If you have a recommendation of a contemporary that is maybe a hidden gem or something like that, I would be interested in reading, hearing what you have to say, because that's one I might skip this year. I don't know. If I can't find something really that sounds really compelling, I might just skip it this year. And then some non-reading prompts. One is to watch a direct screen adaptation. I just recently watched the Emma BBC series starring Johnny Lee Miller and Romola Garai. I don't know how to read. And that was a lot of fun. I hadn't seen that one yet, and everyone had recommended it as being really good. And I'm happy to report that it is, in fact, really good. And Johnny Lee Miller might almost come close to dethroning my favorite Mr. Knightley, which is, of course, Jeremy Northam from 1996's Emma. But the Emma that came out, I believe, in 2020, also has a great Mr. Knightley in it. He's just such a fantastic character. In fact, going back to that book I read, the Jane Austen and the Clergy, there's this really great section that talks about Mr. Knightley and his compassion and empathy that he has for everyone, including Mr. Woodhouse, who is quite possibly just a hypochondriac. But Mr. Knightley doesn't treat him any less of a person, or isn't dismissive of him, and doesn't treat him like Emma treats Miss Bates in the story. So yeah, the way he treats Emma's dad is just, from the get-go, shows what a profoundly good character he is, and a moral character, one that you immediately recognize as being a character worth paying attention to. So this month, I definitely want to watch a Jane Austen, and I might just kick it with some old favorites. I might watch the Pride and Prejudice movie with Keira Knightley. That's I think my favorite. That's my favorite version. Especially the hand flex scene. You know, if you know, you know. I love it. I mean, everything from the soundtrack to the performances. It's just sheer perfection for me. And I think one of the reasons I like it is because of their portrayal of Darcy. In this movie, the way he's portrayed, it's almost more like he's just painfully shy, maybe even suffering depression, and is just the introvert of all introverts. And so I think it perfectly balances that his impression is one of being, brusque and perhaps even very proud. But then when you realize what is actually happening and who he actually is, it really does well, I think, in his performance, Matthew Macfadyen's performance, of showing that kind of internal struggle that, I always thought Darcy might have had. So if for no other reason, I love this film because of the confirmation bias it brings, that they interpret Darcy the way I would interpret Darcy. All right. And then another, of course, my favorite is Emma, the 1996 version. It's a great one. And then watch a modern screen adaptation retelling of a Jane Austen book. This is another one I have a lot of fun with. Of course, the all-time classic, the best version of an updated classic, is Clueless, starring the beautiful, talented, gorgeous, still makes my heart swoon, Alicia Silverstone. When I first saw this film, I don't know how old I was. I was a teenager, and I just fell in love. I fell in love, and we rented the VHS from, the local Blockbuster or whatever it was. That's how old I am, guys. And we had it for 4 days, and I watched it every single day. It was just so good. And I probably could have watched it again for a fifth time. I loved it. Then it'd been years and years since I'd seen it. And then a couple years ago for Jane Austen July, I revisited that, watched it. Still holds up. Still a good story. So that's one I'd recommend. Of course, many people do, but I have actually found a lot of enjoyment in watching some of the web series that have been created. There's the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which is a classic of web series. That's probably if I'm honest, that's probably my favorite version of Pride and Prejudice, now that I think about it. It is just sheer perfection. Filmed as like a video vlog series. You think this isn't going to work, and then it works, and it works fantastically. Also, Emma Approved. I watched that. That is, of course, based on Emma. The Mr. Knightley character in that one is also just perfection. She might actually be, performance-wise, my favorite version of Emma. Controversial, perhaps. Hot take, definitely. But it's really good. And then Marissa recommended some on her channel. Recommended, and Marissa is one of the hosts of Jane Austen July. She recommended, if you like web series, watch From Mansfield with Love, which I think I'm going to do that since I'm reading Mansfield Park this year. I might start watching that web series. Looks like it's a nice long series, so I should probably won't get it finished in July, but I'll definitely start it. Yeah, so those are my that's my TBR for Jane Austen July. I'd love to know if you're participating. Give me some recommendations. I'm feeling kind of stale this year when it comes to finding something to read for Jane Austen. So I'll be cutting back. At least that's the plan right now. I mean, the exciting news though is that this means there's only about 3 months until Victober starts, and that's the greatest booktube reading event. With apologies to Garbogust, I know some say that that's the best reading. I disagree. Victober is where it's at. So looking forward to that. All right, with that, I'll go ahead and wrap up today. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. There's some links in the show notes there to that might be of interest to you to find some of these books and things I've talked about and some of the channels I've mentioned. All right, so with all of that, thanks for watching. Happy reading and take care.